Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our Facebook Live, our weekly, every Thursday Facebook Lives, where we tackle something as related to motherhood in this pandemic. And I'm so happy because we have a special guest for you, a special gift, I like to say. And Danica Wynn, she is here with us to share. And we are talking all things breastfeeding in and out of a pandemic. So, I know that we have lots of women, two women so far who have given birth in LunaYou, and they are actively breastfeeding and they've had some questions, plus the women that we have that are about to give birth that have some questions as well. So this is what we're talking about today. We're super excited. I'm going to introduce Danica in just a little bit, and she'll talk a little bit about herself and what she does. But my name is Courtney, and I work as the well-being coach for LunaYou. I get the awesome job of being with the women, talking to them every week, checking in, and just being a part of their lives and just well-being. So if you know a woman or a mother that is expecting and could really benefit from a well-being check-ins, a circle of support of other women around her peer support group, and identifying the circle of support she already has in her family, tell her to reach out to us or send us her information. This would be a great Mother's Day gift for her to get this, to really focus on her well-being. And so that's what we're all about, to here to come alongside of a woman and to help her in this time of pregnancy. So I have Danica here. Danica is a midwife, and she's going to describe a little bit about what she does extensively, and just how she is just like the bomb.com. So welcome, Danica. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Thank you, Courtney. So my name is Danica Wynn. I'm a certified nurse midwife and I'm also a lactation consultant. So I get the great privilege of attending births, providing gynecologic care, as well as helping people through their breastfeeding journey. And I do that both in outpatient care settings, I do that in the hospital, and also through telehealth. So trying to make sure that I'm meeting people where they're at and making sure that they have easy access to care is really what I'm all about. And I also hold the title of mom of three babies who I have breastfed, and not a single one of them has been an easy journey. So I have the badges of honor to show that while breastfeeding is totally natural, it can be also a hurdle to overcome sometimes for people. And definitely there are challenges that require a good deal of support. And that is what I want to provide to others who are going through the breastfeeding process and trying to learn more about it either before they give birth, so antenatally, or while they're in the thick of it.
Yeah, yeah. And so like let's get into that because first let's just talk about, I'm gonna kind of skip around, but let's just talk about COVID-19 in breastfeeding.
Mhm.
What do you know about how if a pregnant woman does contract COVID-19, if it's passed along through breast milk?
That's a great question. And it's one we're getting a lot as lactation consultants and as midwives. And the data so far shows that there is not transmission of COVID-19 through breast milk. Um, However, that could change. We could get more information. The CDC is our best resource for that information right now. But what I will tell you is that regardless, we know that the immuno kind of response that happens from a mother who has COVID-19 or has been exposed to it, breastfeeding her child means that her baby will be better protected against COVID-19 themselves.
Wow.
So, what happens during breastfeeding, antibodies that the mother has created, so for example, against a virus like the flu or like COVID-19, are passed through the breast milk passively to the baby, and therefore the
Mhm.
baby is better protected from getting that illness. So it's less likely to get sick or less likely to get severely sick from the virus. So we know that there are benefits that far outweigh the risks at this time.
Wow. That's good to know. So benefits far outweigh the risk. That's really great to know. So For a seemingly healthy mother who does not have COVID or just like kind of living in this pandemic after giving birth and they're just home, some of the hurdles and the barriers that you kind of know, your breast is, it's like a bottle, but it's not, right? Like you can't see the
Right.
glass to see how much milk the baby is intaking. You can't look at the little dots and the tickers to say, okay, they drank that much. How do you know if your baby is getting enough milk?
That's a great question. So the way that I teach new parents how to know their baby is getting enough is to think about a couple of things. Number one is that when a baby is first born, their belly is the size of a marble. It's really tiny. It
Mm.
will stretch to accommodate more fluid, just the way that our bellies stretch to accommodate a Thanksgiving dinner. But what it actually needs for satiety is very small. And so, in the first few days of life, babies only need a couple of good feeds a day where they're getting small amounts of fluid. From the breast. And oftentimes, you're not going to see that transfer of milk because it is just little drops. And that can be really alarming to people, especially because baby's only way of really verbally communicating with us is through crying. And we've been trained to think that crying means hunger, but actually, it means a whole myriad of things to a baby. What we really know is that breastfeeding input correlates with diaper output. So, if a baby is breastfeeding enough, they're going to have adequate numbers of wet and dirty diapers each day. And those in the first week, when you're most anxious and when maybe you haven't seen your pediatrician yet, are related to the number of days of life. So on day one, you're going to have one wet, one dirty diaper. Day two, two wet, two dirty diapers. Day three, three wet, three dirty diapers, so on and so forth. And then we know that babies will lose a little bit of weight right away after they're born, and that's totally normal and expected. But they'll get back up to their birth weight by about 2 weeks of life. And so that's another way to know that your breast milk has fully come in and that you're doing an awesome job keeping up with your baby's needs. And most people overwhelmingly will be able to do that.
Good. No, that's good. So what about pain? Is breastfeeding supposed to hurt or what, like what if I, or does it hurt? And what if I have pain while breastfeeding?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Everybody's different, right? Our bodies all experience pain differently and discomfort differently, and what we can tolerate is different. So I always kind of get a little bothered by people saying breastfeeding shouldn't hurt. Breastfeeding doesn't hurt. Well, that's all relative. You've probably never had a 7 to 8 pound human hanging off your boob 8 to 12 times a day, right? So it might get a little uncomfortable. That would be really normal in the early days of breastfeeding as your body's getting used to it. But if you're having pain that's persistent, not going away, making a feeding intolerable, I highly recommend reaching out for help. So, when you're in the hospital, that might mean pressing your call bell and having your nurse come in and asking to see a lactation consultant. When you're at
Mm.
home, that might be reaching out via telemedicine, or even just putting in a phone call to a lactation consultant to talk about the issues that you're experiencing. Um, I will say that it's really important for folks to know that OBGYNs, midwives, pediatricians are not always trained in specifically the medicine surrounding breastfeeding and the science surrounding breastfeeding. So they get kind of like a broad stroke, but that's not always their specialty. And that's completely okay because we have this whole profession dedicated to it. So if you're
Mhm.
having a hard time and maybe not getting the support that you feel you might need from your healthcare provider that provides care specifically to you, feel free to find a way to connect with a lactation consultant. We have an amazing amount of resources in Rhode Island actually for that kind of care. That's that ranges kind of the scale in terms of fees and also many who are able to accept insurances. And WIC offices are a fantastic resource for that kind of care as well. And often there is provided free.
Yeah, awesome. Because I think a lot of times when you think of a lactation specialist or consultant, you think like, oh wow, this is like a luxury or a
Right.
specialty item that like it's not necessary or I could spend my money. But this is actually a good investment if there is a fee. But there's tons of resources and help too, especially through your insurance, even that can help you get the assistance that you need to make sure that you are fulfilling your goal if your goal is breastfeeding or your baby is getting the nourishment that it needs. So I think
Yeah.
that's a great point. And
Here
then
in
with
Rhode
that
Island
though,
oh,
uh-huh.
sorry.
Go,
I was
no,
gonna
go.
say here in Rhode Island, some great community resources, that are either low cost or free are looking into local, support groups around breastfeeding through La Leche League and through Chocolate Milk Cafe, and those are great resources, for folks to be able to reach out and not only get the help that they need, but also build a community that's going through something similar to what they are.
Yes, yes, and that's these are all great resources. And we'll put these on our website as well too, so that you can connect with them and have them available after this session even. So with that, if my baby wants to eat all the time, earlier you mentioned that we're kind of wired to believe that when a baby's crying, we automatically think that they're hungry or things
Right.
like that. But my baby wants to eat all the time. Does this mean I'm not making enough milk?
No, actually, quite the opposite. So, our bodies are really amazing. Our breasts do a lot of pretty cool things, including warming up to keep a baby warm. So, they actually increase in temperature. Our bodies, when we do skin to skin against the breast with babies, can help them regulate their blood sugar, can help them regulate their breathing. So, a myriad of amazing things. The other thing that our bodies are able to do is to adjust the amount of breast milk that we create and the contents of the breast milk that we create to meet the unique situations that our babies are in. So often, when a baby is feeding very frequently, or cluster feeding is what we call it, where they feed, maybe every hour, and it can be quite exhausting because they love to do that in the middle of the night. We think that means that we're not making enough milk. In fact, it means that your baby is trying to help you produce more milk. They may be going through a growth spurt. Um, they may just be needing something different. And also, they use your breast as a comfort mechanism. So, babies who don't know night from day may still be wanting to be with their mama, and that includes being at the breast. And so, while it can be frustrating, just know that it's a normal physiologic response. And as long as baby is making those wet and dirty diapers, and is able to go to sleep after a few breastfeeding sessions and conk out for a couple of hours, they are most likely getting the milk that they need.
Fantastic. No, that's good to know that it's a soothing thing for babies, and that it's not necessarily that they're not getting enough milk. I mean, it can be really hard, especially for a first time parent, to kind of
Yeah,
gauge that and judge, like, okay, is this right? Is this what am I doing? So that's really helpful and reassuring. And so, lastly, let's get into like pumping and tell us a little bit about like what is pumping for those like new mothers that are pregnant right now, and when or should they pump, and all of that.
awesome. Okay, so pumping is when you use a automatic or manual pump, so something that you use by hand to squeeze and apply suction to the breast, or something that is a machine that's plugged in that applies suction to your breast to help remove milk. A couple of things about breast pumping. One of the big ones that I always like to stress to people: your insurance will cover the cost of a breast pump. So usually that's around week 36 that they're willing to dispense a breast pump. You can get it from specific companies that they work with to get a breast pump usually shipped to your home, make it as easy as possible. And that's something that you get to keep and part of your insurance. So definitely cash in on that great benefit. Um,
Absolutely.
there are
Mhm.
also breast pumps available in the hospitals where you are delivering. And I can be certain of that because I know that they're available in all of our Rhode Island hospitals. And breast pumps available there are available to use for a short period of time just when you're inpatient. The reasons that you would use a breast pump: the first one is if baby is just not doing a great job feeding. Some babies are a little lazy at first. That's especially true of babies who were born by a C section or born a little bit premature. They may need a little more assistance being able to maintain sucking and swallowing at the same time, and their breathing, and they might not always be efficient feeders. Um, one thing that's important to know: breastfeeding is a supply and demand system. So, as the baby feeds more, your body responds by producing sufficient milk. When that's not happening in the early days of life, it's really important to provide that stimulation to your body with a breast pump. So, if for whatever reason you need to be separated from your baby in those early days, or if baby's just not doing a great job feeding, advocate for yourself. And hopefully you don't need to, but advocate for yourself to get a breast pump in your hospital room so that you can start pumping within the first 3 hours of life if you weren't able to breastfeed, and keep going with pumping sessions at least every 3 hours until you and baby can be reunited, or until baby decides that they're going to do a great job of latching and sucking. Another reason that you would use a breast pump is because you want to stockpile a little milk to
Mhm.
have on hand, so that a friend, partner, family member can do feedings with the baby, either using a medicine dropper or a bottle, to provide that baby with a little extra supplementation so that you can get out by yourself a little bit so that you can get some sleep, or for when you're returned to work. Um, I generally recommend, if you're doing it for that reason, to try to hold off for about 2 to 3 weeks for so many reasons. One of the big ones, you don't need extra stuff to do in the first few weeks of breastfeeding and caring for a baby, and you're going to be really tired. And try to protect people's time and people's energy levels by recommending that they hold off. Also, your body is going to be adjusting to the amount of milk that it needs. So you want to kind of make sure that your body is making just enough for that one baby and not overexerting itself. But breastfeeding and pumping can be really helpful hand in hand. And most women nowadays will need to introduce a pump at some point so they can return to work, and be able to use that pump when they're away from their babies. And again, keeping on that same schedule that a baby would feed, which is about every 3 hours at minimum.
Great. No, thank you. Thank you so much for just those topics and those amazing resources. I've learned even more than what I think that I knew. And that's really, I think, important for women that are navigating through these times, especially of COVID, and being able to feed and take care of their baby. That no matter what you choose to do, that it's a perfect way for you. And so whatever you need to do to be confident in that. So, Danica, tell us where a woman can find you or get a hold of you if they want to connect with you.
That's great. Yeah. So, one place that people can find me is on Maven Clinic, which is an app for telehealth and virtual medicine. I would be more than comfortable with people finding me also through you, Courtney, if they needed me in the future for support. And I also practice occasionally at Planned Parenthood in Providence and at Landmark Medical Center in Woonsocket.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining in. And thank you so much, Danica, for being here with us. Every week, we end with just a saying that says, "You are magical." So, you are magical. You're carrying magic, whether you're pregnant right now, you have magic in your breast, and you're able to feed your child and sustain your family. And that is just perfect. And so, you are magical. Never forget that. So thank you so much just for this time. If you guys have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat feature. We'll try to comment back some resources to really help you in this time with breastfeeding. So thank you, everybody. And we'll see you back here next week, Thursdays at 4:30 for our Facebook Lives, Pregnant in a Pandemic. All right. Awesome.
Take care.
Yeah.